Good evening, Steeler fans. Welcome to another Wednesday night. And with that, a return of Know Your Enemy, the podcast from behind the steel curtain that looks at who the Steelers are facing this week. I'm your host, Geoffrey Benedict. With me, as always, Shannon White. Shannon, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Just good to be here. And I was just telling you before the show, you look at snazzy.
Thank you very much. It's
Nice
been a while.
haircut, all cleaned up. Yeah.
I was getting a little scruffy. Yeah. For those of you who are listening on the podcast, you can't see it. If you're here on YouTube, you can see that my mostly bald head is now also more clean cut. Ouch. Just kicked over a bottle. That was great. Show's getting off to a great start here. Anyways, we are flying. Well, we're not flying solo. We're flying duo tonight. The dynamic duo is flying without a guest tonight. We tried to get you a guest, talk about the Miami Dolphins, but apparently they're not interested. Dolphins have, I guess, better things to do than come on here and talk to us. So we're flying solo here. Shannon, let's start off the show. The story of the Dolphins season so far has been Tua Tagovailoa. They were undefeated when he was playing. Hurt, and since he's been hurt, not so much. Is Tua Tagovailoa, like I said this beforehand, but is he on that TJ Watt level where for Miami, where he is just so integral to what they do that it's just going to be like this? Like when he's healthy, they can win. When he's not, anyone can beat him.
I think that's more common with a starting quarterback than it is with an outside linebacker or edge guy like Watt. But Tua is, I'm going to not say his last name very often so I don't butcher it. But he's really showed this year that if you give him weapons, which they did with, Waddle and with Hill and Gesicki, I can't say his last name either. The tight end, Mike Gillespie, not Gillespie. Gesicki. They have a lot of weapons, and with him there leading that charge, those two receivers have been dynamic and big play guys. And you think about Hill, that's his end, but I didn't realize that Waddle was such a explosive big play threat as well. So they've really just created havoc. Well, when he's out, Bridgewater is a different type of quarterback altogether. And then Thompson is a rookie. So I was actually kind of hoping that he, just to be on the safe side, they keep him out one more game so he would miss this game. And, I am happy that he's doing well. Don't get me wrong. But he's going to make that a much, much tougher game. Then I would much rather face Bridgewater than him.
Yeah. And Bridgewater actually was doing better. Skylar Thompson, man, he was struggling something mightily, but even Bridgewater wasn't putting up what Tua was. One of the things that stood out to me on offense when I was looking through the stats, and I just went through and looked at what people did with Tua, what they did without Tua, trying to see if there was anything going on there. Tua played about half the season, roughly, right around there. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, when on passes from Tua, are very close in yardage. Very close. They had like 370 and like 360 yards, right? So right there, right with each other. Tua goes down. And since then, Tyreek Hill has had double the yards of Jalen Waddle. And so you can, like, just looking at like our quarterback situation where you have when Mitch Trubisky is in, George Pickens does literally nothing on the offense. He's like, you don't have to worry about him. And then when Kenny Pickett is in, he wasn't getting the ball to Chase Claypool very often. Like you had games like that where you're just like, it's easier to defend this because this quarterback and this wide receiver are not working. It's not working. I think that explains a lot. But looking at that and looking at their win-losses, looking at how their offense kind of stagnated when they became very much more reliant on Tyreek Hill, made me think about the Steelers' offense under Mitch Trubisky. And the Steelers' offense, even a little bit with Kenny Pickett, although we saw that last game, he was starting to get the ball to Chase more. But really, how important is it to have a quarterback, either if you're the Dolphins or even the Steelers here, that uses all the receivers and can build chemistry with all of his targets?
Well, like you said, it doesn't make sense. In the Dolphins case, Tua is probably, with Hill's speed and quickness, he gets open, quite a bit, just like Deontay Johnson does. Those guys are always going to look open, so they're going to receive the lion's share of the passes, when they're the first or second option. It's the Claypool and Pickens for the Steelers. They need to be schemed open more, in my opinion. We've talked before. Do not like how Canada's been using Claypool. Claypool is like a dynamic tight end with his size and his power. He's faster than most tight ends, obviously, but he doesn't always play to that speed. But he does. He is easily the best the Steelers have at running after the catch. And there was a couple of times against the Buccaneers that he caught the ball and then trucked a couple of guys and picked up extra yardage. I love to see that. And it's something that if they will use him more, which we thought they were going to out of the slot, and across the middle, he can do that. But I know you saw the same thing. The Steelers started a game with Pickett with those scripted drive, and it was very efficient. They had a good rhythm. They went down and scored. Then they got the lead, and then everything else for the rest of the first half was back to that same. It looked so much like all the other games have looked. They get the lead, they get conservative. It's like Pickett wasn't trying to drive the ball down the field. It was a lot of them 5-yard out passes, and ineffective running game, which they're still struggling there. But I thought that when Trubisky got to come in or had to come in, no more first round draft pick looking over his shoulder. It was his game to bring home, and he played much differently. I mean, he still had plays he didn't read the field good. Like on one of his sacks, he just kind of turtled after the first couple options wasn't open. But then it just seemed like on other plays he used his mobility. He got clear throwing lanes and sight lines because when he can see, what he's doing, he's not really great in anticipation, but when he can see it develop, he can be effective because he's got a good arm. So I was really happy for him. He showed a lot of professionalism. But they're going to have to get on the same page at some point. I don't know if that will come when they stick with the guy for a while and they can develop a rapport with all the receivers because, as you said, they're limiting themselves by not utilizing all the receivers or the whole field because, again, they're still not attacking the middle of the field like they need to. But if Freiermuth comes back, maybe this week, Freiermuth and Claypool could really work the middle and down the seams, and hopefully the Steelers will use them.
I have to agree with you. The opening drive of Week 6 against Tampa Bay looked a lot like the way the defense was covering plays and the way Kenny Pickett was reading the play. Mm-hmm. It was like they saw what Tampa Bay was going to do in certain circumstances. Like they were looking at film, saw it, and Canada was like, you know what? I know how to exploit this, which is something we saw in college. He would sometimes face a team that had like a very good defense, but they had some tells, they had some tendencies, and he would just absolutely destroy them. And he'd go and face other teams, and just his offense wouldn't do much at all, right? When he had that advantage, he could really do it. And he had that there. It is what it looked like, right, on the first drive. It looked very much like a game where he picked something out that was a flaw in the Tampa Bay defense and was attacking different ways. Gave the ball on the field, they score a touchdown. And I agree with you. They went back to that. Well, just don't force any turnover. Just don't commit any turnovers. Take it easy, and that doesn't work. And it really doesn't work with Mitch Trubisky. And we saw Trubisky come in there and start throwing the ball around. Really just start throwing the ball around. And frankly, what started it, you look at some of Trubisky's first throws downfield, they're mistakes. There's defensive mistakes. There's one that Devin White, who's having a phenomenal season, he's lined up inside. He heads right outside and overlaps with a safety, almost like he thought they were going to be in a cover 4 set, and they were in a cover 3 set, and he needed to be inside. It was weird, and he just left it wide open for Chase Claypool. They did it again. They messed up with the big Connor Hayward play. But Mitch Trubisky came in. There were a few plays like that where it really got him going, and he looked like a player who wasn't playing it safe, who was willing to actually take throws. But one of the things I've noticed with this offense, and I don't know if it's Matt Canada's offense because it wasn't this way always with Ben Roethlisberger. There was a lot more stuff going on with Ben Roethlisberger was in charge of this, was throwing the ball here. But with Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett, 85% of these passes are to spot routes where your receiver is going to go to a place, stop, and then turn and look for the ball, right? And I don't know if that's Matt Canada's offense because that's a college thing, right? That is a college thing. But also, that's something you do when your quarterback isn't in a rhythm or isn't able to anticipate. And Mitch Trubisky isn't good at it. And Kenny Pickett is a rookie. Timing isn't, NFL timing it takes time. That's why rookies typically struggle their first year. And then the second year, you start to see who they really are because they start to feel that timing better. But they're doing so many of these spot routes. And it's just, it doesn't work well. It just doesn't create yards after catch. It doesn't create much. And you're just relying on execution over and over and over again. And all it takes is one mistake, for that drive to just kind of stall out. So I'm just agreeing with you, Shannon. There, do you think there's much chance they get out of that kind of rut and really get something going here, maybe before the bye week? Because I know the bye week is always a big deal for the Steelers with how their rookies perform and what they ask rookies to do. Do you think we see that before the bye week, or are we going to have to survive with what we've got and hope that after the bye week, TJ Watt returns and maybe they unleash Kenny Pickett a little bit more?
Well, the hope to me is being Kenny Pickett because of his, as you've seen, man, when that ball comes out so crisp, he's so accurate. He hits guys where they can do something with after the catch. And I think that if Canada will kind of loosen the reins a little bit there, I fear that they're preaching to Pickett the same thing they were preaching to Trubisky, and that ball security, protect the ball, because that's just such an emphasis. Because Tomlin mentions at every press conference,
oh yeah,
that turnover margin, and when they lose, he's like, "Well, we turned it over 3 times," but that's just the way the NFL is now. If you watch, there'll be some really good games. The first 2 drives of the Buffalo Kansas City game ended in turnovers in the red zone, but nobody batted an eye because they know they're going to score. It was just good defensive plays, and they had to figure out some things that the defenses were doing to them. But it wasn't like it is. The Steelers have a turnover, and it's like the end of the world. Like oh gosh, and we give up a touchdown. That's like 2 touchdowns for a normal team because they just haven't found any offensive rhythm.
Yeah.
But I think that Pickett, if he could, be healthy and be the quarterback and keep getting these first team reps, keep getting experience during each game, and they loosen the reins a little bit, there's going to be mistakes. But this team is easily capable of scoring 21, 28 points a game. They've got too much talent to not. The way they use them sometimes is what's so frustrating. Like, they kept trying to run Harris outside zone, and he's getting tackled behind the line of scrimmage. Then they bring Warren in and run in between the tackles. And, it's obvious that Warren is more effective on them outside zone runs. If you watch the Cowboys, they use Ezekiel Elliott mostly inside, and then they'll bring in Pollard and use him because of his speed and quickness in a different way to keep, I ain't saying that you can't run Warren inside, but it's like the Steelers keep doing everything backwards. Like thinking, well, if we do this, we're going to surprise them because they're expecting that. Well, sometimes just see what you could do if you actually use the talent you have in the way that best fits that talent.
Mm-hmm.
And so, they keep talking about, Calvin Austin III. And they're like, well, he missed the preseason and he's, been on IR. And Canada's like, I don't know how I'm going to use him. What do you mean you don't know how you're going to use him? That kind of speed, they did, I think, 2 sweeps to Deontay Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
And that is not Deontay Johnson's strength.
No.
That's Claypool's strength.
Mm-hmm.
Even Pickett's more than Johnson. Johnson, he's a slight build guy. When he gets touched, he goes down. You could do those plays with Calvin Austin III. You could throw him some kind of screen. Because he's the type of guy, if he makes the guy miss, he could go the distance.
Yep.
And it just concerned me. I don't know if you heard Canada say that. He's like, I don't know how we're going to use him. I'm like, seriously? This team needs splash plays. It needs chuck plays. That gets them going. It gets them excited. They had a few, on Sunday, and those were huge plays in the game. And I mean, I don't see how they can't not try to at least work Calvin Austin III in there.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to try something. Now, Steven Sims this week is he didn't practice yet. So he's on the injury.
Hamstring, wasn't it?
What?
I think it's hamstring, wasn't it?
Yeah. So we don't know if he's going to play this week. You're going to need someone back there.
Mm-hmm.
You going back to Gunner? I mean, I think that's played out. Really, I think to me that's played out. I want to quick kind of switch gears and go to talk about the Miami defense a little bit. They do have someone that should be familiar to Steeler fans. Melvin Ingram he's over there playing for the Miami Dolphins. He was a defensive player of the month, the first month of the season, even though Shannon, I'm going to go right to you there. I saw that look. Shannon, what are your thoughts on Melvin Ingram as the player of the month for the first month of the NFL season?
It was because of Miami's record and how good they looked. And in those games, he made a couple of big plays, and high profile plays. But there were so many guys on the Steelers. If Watt had a wonderful week 1, if he hadn't got injured,
mm-hmm.
But then Highsmith had 3.5 sacks. He was leading the NFL in sacks, and being constantly double teamed and being the focus of everybody's pass protection. I was shocked when it went to Ingram. I think he had 2 sacks.
Yeah, and his big play was he was the guy who got to the ball in the end zone for the touchdown.
Yeah.
Like that was it. He was the guy who got there. He didn't strip the ball. No. He just got there.
Player of the month. Yeah, and I mean, there was a lot of guys I thought, and I thought Alex Highsmith should have been considered, or Minka Fitzpatrick. He had a huge month.
Mm-hmm.
And so for it to go to Ingram, I was shocked.
Yeah, I was too. And I saw it because a lot of people saw that and assumed just immediately, like, whoa, he must be playing really good. The Steelers made a huge mistake letting him go. I want to talk about this because this is something that drives me crazy, right? The first month of this season, Melvin Ingram was Defensive Player of the Month for the NFL, and people flipped out and said, look what the Steelers did. They could have had him, but they wouldn't play him. Mm-hmm. I want you to know through 4 games with the Steelers, Melvin Ingram played more snaps than he did in any 4-week set with Kansas City last year, mm-hmm. and more than he played with Miami this year. Mm-hmm. He played more with the Steelers. The Steelers, it wasn't a case of them not playing him. They played him more than anyone else who's had him since is willing to play him. Mm-hmm. And he didn't have great numbers. He also didn't have great numbers anywhere else. In Miami, like you look at his numbers at Miami versus his numbers when he was here, they're about the same. Yeah. The difference is he fell on a ball in the end zone, and Miami has Tua Tagovailoa leading them to wins. Mm-hmm. That's really the difference there. Melvin Ingram is not that guy. He lost out to Alex Highsmith, and for a reason, and Alex Highsmith is showing it this season. He's showing the Steelers were right when they said, yeah, you know what, we're going to start taking some of your snaps and giving them to this young kid because he's that good.
If you watch Ingram, he reminds me of Javon Clowney. And the
Okay.
reason why is that they're very flashy. They really show up. I mean, they're always making penetration, and getting in the backfield or pursuing the quarterback around, but they don't finish plays.
Yeah.
They're always, you see them. They're high visibility. You notice them, but they're not always finishing the plays. But when they do finish a few, then it seems like you remember that.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, they keep saying, well, they didn't play Ingram. Yeah, they played him a lot, but without Watt. See, Watt was dealing with the groin injury, and then
Yeah.
Highsmith was dealing with the groin injury. And when it was a couple of games where Steelers were relying on Ingram to be the primary pass rusher, he disappeared.
Yeah.
He disappeared. So, and when he was with the Chargers, he had somebody else on the other side that made him look even better. He's always been that kind of guy. He's a complementary pass rusher. He's not the primary pass rusher.
Yep.
And I think because that he is flashy and flamboyant, he gets, people get really excited when he does anything. Because like Clowney, after he did that hit in college, he comes in the pros and, and you look at him, you think this dude's a freak. But if you really look at him, he's a pedestrian.
Yep. Yeah, he is. In 2019, Bud Dupree was a better edge defender than Clowney was. I don't think he fits quite in the Titans, but they're very similar player. Bud Dupree is a very similar player to Jadeveon Clowney, and I think the Steelers actually had the better one of those two. Jadeveon Clowney has all the athletic talent in the world.
Yeah,
he just doesn't. He doesn't have the technique to go with it. He doesn't have the form to go with the substance.
There's no edge player that sets the edge better than Dupree.
Yeah,
I mean there isn't. In the NFL, and then like I said, the pass rush. He's a power pass rusher, and he gets there a lot of times on hustle and all. But he offers a good pass rush too. So to me, he's much better than Clowney.
All right, I want to go into their pass rush on the Miami Dolphins because we just talked about Melvin Ingram. Melvin Ingram is actually tied for first on the Miami Dolphins with 2 sacks. He's tied with Brandon Jones as safety. I'm familiar with that name because I did a lot looking at what's his name? Brian Flores when he was in Miami and how he used Brandon Jones. They're still using that way. They're still blitzing him a good bit. He's still doing that stuff. He has as many sacks as Melvin Ingram. They have a whole bunch of players with at least 1 sack. They have 8 players on their team with between 1 and 2 sacks. 8 of them, but they don't have anyone with more than that. So that's an interesting thing to look at. Like almost everybody's gotten to the quarterback, but none of them get there reliably, right? 2 safeties are on that list. Javon Holland and Brandon Jones each have, Javon Holland has 1.5. Brandon Jones has 2 sacks. So they do still blitz a lot with their safeties. You still do see that more than like the Steelers. Terrell Edmonds, I think, got a sack at one point because the quarterback was scrambling. That might have been last year. But that's it. That's all you see. Obviously, Minkah Fitzpatrick was close. He had the only quarterback hit against Buffalo. But we're seeing a bit of that with the Steelers. Yeah. Miami still does a lot of it. So you're going to see safety blitzes. You're going to see a lot of defensive linemen rotating in and out. A lot of different linebackers that don't quite they don't quite fit position, so they're used in different ways. You see a lot of stuff with Miami that's kind of interesting. What are your thoughts, Shannon, on this Miami Dolphins defense and how they do it there?
Well, it's we've talked about star power versus scheme driven. Miami scheme driven. They really don't have. I guess Wilkins, their defensive lineman. He's a guy. Christian Wilkins, I think he's a guy that you'd like to have.
Yes.
But there's not a lot of guys on their defense. You're like, oh man, we'd like to have him on the Steelers defense. They don't have a high profile stars, kind of like Buffalo didn't last year. But their defense, to me, this year is actually taking a step back. Without Brian Flores, they've given up a lot of points. Some of these games they won there at the beginning were shootouts, and they just outscored the other team because of Tua and Hill and Waddle, and they was putting up 30-some, 40 points and they to win. And then you see these last few games, they haven't been able to do that without that explosive offense. So hopefully, if Tua, is a little rusty and the Steelers could come out with a overall team defensive effort like they had last week, hopefully the Steelers will be able to exploit that defense a little bit. Is it Howard? Is their cornerback, their top corner?
Yeah.
I think it's Xavier Howard.
Yeah.
He'll be matched up on Deontay, I'm sure. So I think that they're really going to want to try to work Claypool and Pickens and Freiermuth this week. And if Pickett can play, which looks like he may because he had a full practice today. It might be an opportunity for him to finally get us some rhythm and drive the ball a little bit more down the field. Because, you got to think about it. He's been in there against a Jets defense that looks better than what people thought when you look at what they've done since they played the Steelers.
Mm-hmm.
Then they play the Buffalo defense that, they made Mahomes look, mortal. He wasn't explosive against Buffalo. Nobody is. And then the Buccaneers have a good defense, especially pass defense. So this might be the best opportunity for Pickett this week against Miami's defense.
Yeah, I do want to point out on you talk about Christian Wilkins. He did not practice Wednesday. They listed him as a hand injury. So that's usually something a defensive lineman comes back from. If they have to, they'll wrap that thing up. He'll most likely be out there. And also on that defensive front, Emmanuel Ogbah did not participate on Wednesday with a back injury. So that is a hopeful sign because one of the Steelers' things with the offensive line has played really well, except when it comes to really, really good defensive linemen. Those really top line defensive tackles bully them. We saw that even last week with Kevin Dotson when he was matched up with Vita Vea, just getting absolutely destroyed so many times. Like he was getting some of those mismatches. Those matchups were not going his way. We can lament that because that was exactly what Kevin Dotson looked like. He looked like that offensive lineman who you put him against somebody and just let him take that guy out of the game.
Yeah.
Right. And he's not that guy this year. Not at all that guy right now. Hopefully he finds that again, gets back to that level because that was nice. That was a nice thing to see. And this offensive line doesn't have that right now. So if Wilkins is limited or out for this game, that would be a huge blow to Miami because that would take away one of the big weaknesses of the Steelers' offensive line in this game is dealing with a high-end defensive lineman. How does your view change this season so far on the Steelers' offensive line, Shannon?
Well, I'm very happy with James Daniels and with Mason Cole. I think that they've been two excellent additions. Cole is solid. He's not spectacular, but he's been very solid. He's fundamentally sound. He's a good leader. That bad shotgun snap, which could have been disastrous in the fourth last Sunday. That's like the first bad snap I can remember. And I don't know what happened. That can happen to anybody. But I didn't understand why they was in the shotgun to begin with. Because if I remember, it was 2nd and 2, and you're trying to run that clock. I'm like, this has got to be a power run, somewhere inside with Harris, to try to pick that, you want to get that another first down and extend that. And he's in the shotgun. And I was just shocked. And I thought if Trubisky would not have been able to fall on that, I would still be screaming, why were you in the shotgun in that situation? But again, I think Daniels is getting better each week. He's playing like I thought he could play. He's been really solid. He moves so well. He's really a good fit for this scheme. So is Cole. And I think, people was down on Okafor after last game, but I didn't see it. Now, somebody told me that if you pay attention, the quarterbacks are always having to roll to their left because he's allowing some pressure from his side. I haven't seen it that way. I mean, yeah, he's given a little ground or, swinging them around wide, but I think it's because you see the pressure coming from that side. And that might be why guys, the quarterbacks are kind of going to the left some. But I think the left side, the right side of the line has been much stronger. The issue's been on the left side because I haven't seen the progress out of Moore that I was hoping to see. And Dotson just, I said this week in an article that I'm wondering if, because Kendrick Green struggled so badly last year as a rookie, and it just affected everybody on that line. Trey Turner was an older veteran who was on the downside of his career. And, then you have Kevin Dotson there at left guard. We've talked about it before. I still wonder if left guard is his best position.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. I still wonder if he wouldn't be better off at right guard because James Daniels has played all three interior positions at a high level with the Bears. And I don't think that it would have been a crazy idea to try him at left guard, knowing how badly that Dotson had struggled. I've said this. I think the reason the Steelers tried Kendrick Green like they did at it said he was in competition with Kevin Dotson is because Green's mobility is an excellent fit for this blocking scheme. Dotson's is not.
Yeah.
And I think that was why they did it for two reasons. One, to try Green. Two, to motivate Dotson. And it didn't work, and it was a disaster. So now I think Dotson's behind. But as you said, he's a power guy. He should not have trouble with a power player like Vita. But he did. And that's concerning. And I'm wondering if maybe his future, if he has one, is going to be at right guard. So I think there's been progress, and especially in pass protection. And I think that it's going to come down to that left side of the line, picking up the slack because they're not performing up to par right now.
All right. Well, we're going to take a real quick break here. If you're on YouTube, just we'll do it very quickly. If you're on listening to us on podcast, we're going to take a little commercial break. So we'll be right back. Stay tuned. And here's a message from our current sponsor. All right, welcome back, Steeler fans. Welcome back to Know Your Enemy. Here with Geoffrey Benedict and Shannon White. We're talking the Steelers, Dolphins. And I want to ask you this, Shannon. Keys for this game for the Steelers defense. Give me a couple keys for the Steelers defense for the Steelers to win this game.
I think it's, I don't fear Miami's running game. That's something that they do it's almost like they throw it in there to keep the defenses honest, but what they want to do, and that's attack the field, down the field with Hill and Waddle. And if the Steelers could, they're going to have to keep that safety protection deep. This would have been a wonderful game to get Kazee back. To try that three safety sets that they were talking about using this year, because Kazee can play the slot, but he's really good in center field, and let Fitzpatrick try to bait Tua into something because you can bait him, and he doesn't like to throw the ball over 50 yards. I don't know if you've seen a couple of his interceptions this year. Where Hill was out there and he had to give it everything he had, to try to get that ball 50, 60 yards deep to hit Hill, and he underthrew him. So the Steelers kind of know that they can play 50 yards in and keep stuff in front of them. So I think the key will be if they don't let Hill and Waddle have explosive afternoons. They're going to get theirs, but nothing, huge after the catch, let's say. I think they can definitely slow down Miami and stay in the game.
Yeah. I agree with you. The run game, like a lot of teams, quarterbacks get involved in the run game. Tua is not a runner. People, I have the number of times I've heard him referred to as an athletic quarterback by like just casual fans, people on Twitter, and it's like, yeah, he doesn't run the ball. And he has like 1 yard rushing this season. And in previous years, he averaged like 10 rushing yards a game. That's not a running quarterback. That's not someone who's a threat to run. Miami's run game is not anything to worry about or stress about, at least. Raheem Mostert is a good back, but he's not special. They're not a great running team.
Mm-hmm.
It really comes down to, like, take away Tyreek Hill.
Mm-hmm.
And then also still, contain Jalen Waddle. Looking at the Steelers injury report for this game, those cornerbacks are back, playing, limited. Ahkello Witherspoon, obviously, with a hamstring still. He was a limited participant Wednesday. Cam Sutton was a limited participant on Wednesday. And who was the other cornerback? Levi Wallace was a full participant. So that's promising. Minkah Fitzpatrick, limited. That looks right now like those guys are going to be back. But it doesn't know. We don't know if they're going to be 100%. If you're not 100%, you're facing Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. You could be in trouble. Shannon, how confident are you that the Steelers can do, like what they've done in the past? Because in the past, they've actually shut down Tyreek Hill. Mm-hmm. They did their very first game facing Patrick Mahomes back there in, was it 2018? They absolutely shut down Tyreek Hill. And you could tell they were focusing on doing that. And then Patrick Mahomes just scrambled around and threw to Travis Kelce all day because they couldn't cover him with Vince Williams and John Bostic. But do you think the Steelers, with this secondary situation, can limit Tyreek Hill without giving up literally everything else?
Yeah, I'm always concerned about the middle of the field, and the Steelers surprised the Buccaneers with that 3 inside linebacker nickel set they was using, and using Spillane as a box safety or a nickel linebacker. I mean, and if he gets matched up with Waddle or Hill at any point, I mean, it's just going to, like I said, they're not even going to be able to keep up with him in a trail position. And that's very dangerous to, miss tackle or a guy slip or get out of position, and it's 7. So I'm more concerned with the middle of the field, and that's why I said I'd love to see the 3 safety look, but I don't know if there's any talk of activating Kazee or not. But there's always a silver lining, and I think the fact that Jackson and Pierre played so well last week, they were just solid. I mean, they were physical. They tackled the ball well. They were in, they weren't playing tight man, but they were trying to pick up in man. And I was impressed that maybe, and hopefully the Steelers now realize that maybe they go 5 deep at corner and will maybe try to use, because, I think Jackson's probably the fastest corner the Steelers have outside of Witherspoon. They were the 2 fastest guys. And it seems like it'd be a good idea to get Jackson to play this week, because that's going to be Miami's biggest advantage, is the speed at receiver. So I'm hoping that they can kind of, do a good job this week again in the middle of the field. Bush seemed like he had one of his best games in a long, long time. And he seemed like he was flowing to the ball. He wasn't hesitating. And, that's what he is. He's a coverage guy. He's a movement linebacker. And when he does like he did Sunday, he could really help him and Jackson in the middle of the field. Spillane, I don't think it's a good matchup this week.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I know we don't usually bring up comments from the live chat very often, but Tyler W. brings up something that I absolutely wanted to talk about here when he says, if Flores doesn't know where Tua is weak, nobody knows. We've got to surprise him again. What kind of factor okay, let me reword this. Do the Steelers need Brian Flores to be a factor and show up this week and give him a game plan and say, hey, no, I know how to rattle Tua. I know how to get in his head. I know how to mess with his reads. I know this offense. I know what they're trying to do, and I know this quarterback. Do we need Brian Flores to step up and kind of have that insider information and help the Steelers, have an advantage this week?
I think that it's hard to say that Flores is going to be a big advantage because this is a really different Miami team, just from the addition of Hill alone.
Yeah.
And I would like to think that he could give them some insights that they can use, but I'm not hanging my hat on it that that's going to be the difference in a victory or because, again, there's some things that Flores like to do that the Steelers are just, their personnel is not capable of doing.
Yeah.
And because of that, I think it's limited his effectiveness this year. I think that there's things they would like to do, that he's really specialized in, that they just don't have the personnel to run. So, there might be a player or two here that not just against Tua, but against the defense, which he knows very well, that he might, because he knows their personnel, which is more similar than the offense in a lot of ways because they've had more changes there. So he might be able to offer them some insights on how to attack the defense, which might actually be more beneficial than Tua, because I think Tua is kind of come into his own a little bit with Hill coming on and having that confidence. Because, Tua looks much better this year when he was healthy than he ever did in the past.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely has. Any other factors you're really looking for this game, Shannon, where you're looking at and saying this is a big story for this game?
Each week I'm wanting to see improvement. As I've said before, I'm not as much worried about the wins and losses. You want to win every game, but I want to see them start to improve, because you have to decide if Pickett the guy or not. The rest of this year, that's the main thing. Is he potentially your next franchise quarterback? If he is, you got him without giving up the farm. I mean, you look at Denver, you look at Cleveland. There's other teams that they went all in to get these veterans. If it works, they're going to look like geniuses. If it don't, they set themselves back for 3 or 4 years minimum because of how much they give up to get them. If Pickett is the answer, then the Steelers can really look and see what they need going into free agency into the next draft cycle and take advantage of that quarterback on that rookie contract. It seems like all these teams that show up out of nowhere, that's what they have. I've already heard people talk about, well, if Addison comes into the draft, the Steelers would have to take him because look how that worked for Burrow and Chase. But there's no set way to build a championship team. You look at how the Rams did it. They mortgaged the future for the present, and they won a championship. Now, they don't look as good this year, but they won the championship. So if you're going to gamble, you gamble big, and then if you win, it paid off. That'll never be the Steelers style. As long as the Rooney's on them, you're never going to see that type of behavior out of the Steelers. So this week, I'm really wanting to see if Pickett is completely healthy. I want to see, as you said, utilize all the receivers, utilize the middle of the field with Claypool and Freiermuth, and I think that will help. If they use Harrison Warren correctly, I think that you can start to see some sustainable offensive success this week, and that's what I'm really hoping to see.
I want to ask you this real quick. The Steelers have this game against Miami, next week against Philadelphia, and then they have the bye week. After the bye, Saints, Colts, Falcons, Panthers, Raiders, and then the AFC North matchups. Have we ever seen a schedule as unbalanced as the Steelers as far as the quality of teams faced before the bye week and the quality of teams they're looking at after the bye week? Where before the bye week, I mean, Tampa Bay is currently 3-3 because the Steelers beat them, but that's still a very talented team. The New York Jets are 4-2. Like, New England Patriots, the Buffalo Bills, the Philadelphia Eagles. Have you seen a run like this where a team just had this brutal of a schedule, and then after the bye week, games just look winnable?
I think it was a while back, the Steelers, the first half of their season, looked really like a cupcake.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second half looked really, really difficult. We talked about it. It was the opposite. It kind of flipped from this year. And it turned out that the first half of the schedule was tougher than they thought it was going to be because a lot of the teams were upstarts. And then a lot of the teams in the second part, which looked really daunting, had a lot of injuries.
Mm-hmm.
That you just don't know. I mean, I thought the Philadelphia would be pretty good.
Yeah.
I didn't think they were going to be undefeated right now.
Yeah.
Miami, you thought, well, they got all that speed, but does Tua have the arm to take advantage of it? And obviously that's been a real success till he got hurt. Now you have to see how the rest of the year goes. But, again, eventually Tampa was going to, Brady's going to get older. At some point, it's going to start to show up. No more Gronkowski. They had some question marks there, and they've had a lot of injuries. The Steelers had winnable games.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I think that if they would have started Pickett, because you could see in the preseason that he was quicker, he anticipated better, he was more accurate. They struggled so mightily in the first 3 games on offense that were all very winnable. I think that they would have beat the Jets, and I believe they would have beat Cleveland. And then it'd be a completely different look right now. But they did it the way they did it, and you can't go back. But I'm like you. If they get through these next 2 games, even if they can win one of them, and then go into the bye and hopefully get healthy, get some guys back, Watt coming back, and some of these other guys healing up, that second half of the season could be a lot of fun. But again, it's all about growth and seeing these young guys. If it's a question of playing a veteran versus a young guy, if they're pretty equal, you play the young guy. You play the guy that can be with you 2-3 years into this rebuild, especially not a veteran who's going to be gone after this year. If it's equal, of course, So yeah. I think that's why it's important to keep that mindset, because you can do both. You can win games. You can be competitive while you're rebuilding when you have as much talent as the Steelers have.
I want to point out here before we get into our score predictions and we head towards the end of the show here that the Steelers right now are 1 game back in the division. 1 game. And in the second half of the season, they have 2 games against Baltimore. Right? They have 2 games against Baltimore. They get the Bengals again. This is a team that if they keep hanging in here, they get TJ Watt back. They win some of these games afterwards. And we know the difference in, the record when TJ Watt plays. The Steelers just won their first game since 2017 when TJ Watt doesn't play. If we get, oh my goodness. Sorry, there's stuff going on in the background here. Completely blew me off track. But the Steelers are 2-4, but they're 1 game out. We could still push to win this division. I also want to add in that the Steelers right now have the worst point differential in the NFL. The worst at -49. And this team doesn't seem like they're that far off from being a playoff contender. Right? It just doesn't, you're just like, if we can hold the fort down until TJ Watt comes back, a little improvement here, a little improvement here. You've got several ifs here, but you don't need all of them to come true for this team to be a playoff contender. You need a lot more for them to be a serious threat when they get to the playoffs. But this team is really kind of a weird situation where you can look at a team that is the worst point differential in the league and say, yeah, but you know what? We're not that far off from a playoff push here. That's a really crazy thing to me. I don't know what to think about that. It's kind of weird because at some point I'm like, the Steelers, maybe this is a fraud thing that we're like, we're wishing, we're putting on our black and gold glasses, we're crossing all our fingers, and if we squint really hard, we can see this team winning games and coming back and being something this season. Or if it's really just, bad luck, injuries, games going wrong, but we're really not that far off. Do you think it's a mirage, Shannon, or do you think this team could actually make a push for the playoffs here this season?
Well, the division looks like it's going to be there's no, exemplary teams in the division right now.
Yeah.
So it's there. A lot of it will depend on playing these young guys, how they progress. When you're playing all these close games and then you get beat 38-3, you're going to be really bad on the point differential.
Yeah.
So that kind of skews a lot of these numbers because they haven't really been blown out. They were in every game. Like I said, they could have easily won all of them besides that Buffalo game.
Mm-hmm.
If they would have just had some offense, or TJ Watt, he would have made he's worth so many points every game, as we know. My only thing is I don't want them to lose sight of the rebuilding mentality, because just sneaking into the playoffs is what they've been doing for the last decade.
That's true.
And now those years they were a championship team in 2017, guys. I mean, if it wasn't for that terrible Jesse James overturn and the injuries in the playoffs, and there's been times that they were that close and they had bad luck. And injuries do that to every team. And remember, there's only one team that wins it every year. So, but here lately, in the last 4 or 5 years, they have not been a contender.
Yeah.
Not a true contender. And I don't think this team is. I think they've got too many holes.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they're close. But why not try to make the playoffs? Why not try to, that experience for the young guys? I said this last year. You knew they weren't going to beat the Chiefs. But just having that experience is something to build on for a lot of the young players. I don't think they got the benefit out of it I was hoping they was going to get out of it. But it was because, again, you knew Ben was retiring and everything was going to be new. So this is pretty much a new team. But I would like to see them have that fight where the games mean a little bit more late in the season.
Yeah.
And these young guys can grow from that experience. And maybe it will be another playoff time if they get a chance, to have another playoff game. So that's all positive if that works out that way. But again, I want to see growth so that we can feel like, hey, going into next year, a player here, a player there, and this team can be a true contender again.
Okay. I love it, Shannon. All right, before we go, we need to give our predictions for this game. Shannon, what's your final score prediction here?
Well, I think that Tua will have some rust. I don't know if he'll be gun shy or not, but I think the Steelers do need to try to, disrupt him, make him move around, make him uncomfortable. I think that I feel encouraged by what we saw last week, by the middle linebacker play that we saw that we haven't seen. It's starting to look a little better each week. Hopefully, Larry Ogunjobi, he played the best game he's ever played for the Steelers easily. He was such a disruptor, and I think he could do that again this week against Miami if he's healthy enough to play. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to.
But hopefully he is.
I think that it's going to be more of a low-scoring game because I think, it's going to be they're going to try not to give up the big plays that Miami relies on so much and make them drive and make them kick field goals. Hopefully they can do that. So I'm gonna go out there on a limb. I've been picking against them, but I'm seeing something along the lines of a 24-21 Steelers in this game.
All right, Shannon, picking the Steelers to win this one. I can't go that far. I think Tua's return spells doom for the Steelers here. I think the secondary is still too banged up to really run with them. You're going to lean heavily on a guy like Terrell Edmonds, when they start putting Tyreek Hill in the slot, you're going to see guys like a guy like Terrell Edmonds have to run with him a lot, because I don't think anyone else in that secondary can right now. I really don't. So I think this game has the earmarks of a problem game. If it wasn't for Tua, I would have picked the Steelers to win this simply because I know the Steelers can shut down Tyreek Hill. But Tua has shown that when Tyreek Hill is getting covered, he can go to Waddle. He can make use of his other weapons, and I don't think the Steelers have enough to take both down. I'm going to go with a lower scoring game here, and I think the Dolphins win this 17-14. That's my prediction. Steelers lose 14-17 to the Miami Dolphins. Shannon White, let people know what you got coming. Anything relevant to this game? Anything fun and exciting? And what they can expect for you this week? Wow, I just lost my train of thought.
No, just formulating an article, but haven't started it yet. It'll be probably Friday before it drops. So just hoping and looking forward to this game this weekend, and hope the Steelers can finally have a little bit of good luck as far as catching maybe Miami with Tua's rusty, and they got some guys on injured on defense, and it might be a game that will give us a little bit of glimpse to a brighter future. So, but no, that's all I got going on right now.
All right, my Vertex coming out with Dave Schofield is on Chase Claypool. Very similar to what we did when Kenny Pickett came in, where we did an article on George Pickens and showed the difference between what he was able to do with Mitchell Trubisky and then with Kenny Pickett. We saw the reverse of that this past week with Chase Claypool, where he had 2 targets under Kenny Pickett, and then him and Mitchell Trubisky got it going. So make sure you check that out, see how that happened and what that tells us about both Chase Claypool and our 2 quarterbacks. Look for that coming out. Other than that, make sure you're staying tuned to the Behind the Steel Curtain network of podcasts. We've got podcasts every day coming out, multiple ones, all very good, all great stuff. Make sure you're checking those out, and make sure you're clicking over to BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, your one-stop shop for all things Pittsburgh Steelers. For Shannon and myself, thank you so much for listening to us. Thank you for your comments in the live chat. We enjoy reading them. We feed off of them. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for listening, those that are listening on the auditory platforms. And as always, have a great week, and let's go Steelers.